professional engineer. Crossings must have a minimum width of 20 inches and be equipped with standard rails. They must also extend a minimum of 24 inches past the surface edge of the trench. Falls and equipment. In addition to cave-in hazards, other hazards that may exist in excavations include falling loads, movement of mobile equipment, and worker falls. To reduce the dangers from these hazards, employers must keep materials or equipment that might fall or roll into an excavation at a minimum distance of 2 feet from the edge of the excavation, and/or have retaining devices in place to keep materials or equipment out of the excavation site. Provide warning systems for mobile equipment such as barricades, hand or mechanical signals, or stop logs to alert the equipment operators when they are approaching the edge of an excavation. In addition to these warning systems, the grade should slope away from the excavation when possible. Remove loose rock or soil, or install protective barricades and equivalent protection to protect employees against falling rock, soil, or materials. Prohibit employees from working on faces of sloped or benched excavations at levels above other employees, unless employees at lower levels are adequately protected from the hazards of falling, rolling, or sliding material or equipment. Prohibit employees from being underneath loads that are being handled by lifting or digging equipment. Require employees to stand away from vehicles that are being loaded or unloaded to avoid being struck by any spillage or falling materials. Operators may remain in the cabs of such vehicles if the cabs provide adequate protection from falling loads during loading and unloading operations. Planning. Before any excavation work begins, site evaluation and planning must be completed. During the planning stage, the following must be done. Soil conditions must be evaluated. Protective systems must be designed and put in place. Approved safety equipment must be on site and readily accessible. Potentially dangerous contact points with utilities such as gas or electric services must be identified. Oxygen levels must be tested when conditions exist that indicate that dangerous levels could be present. Potentially hazardous fumes or gases must be tested for when conditions exist that indicate the potential presence of these. Safe entry and exit points must be determined. Inspections of excavations. A competent person must perform daily inspections of excavations, adjacent areas, and protective systems, looking for evidence of a situation that could result in possible cave-ins, indications of failure of protective systems, hazardous atmospheres, or other hazardous conditions to ensure safe operations. Inspections must take place before work starts and as needed throughout shifts. After rainstorms, high winds, or other occurrences that may increase hazards. When employees are exposed to potential hazards, employees must be immediately evacuated from any excavation under the following circumstances. A possible cave-in is identified. Hazardous atmospheres are detected. Protective systems fail. When any other potentially dangerous situation arises, employees must not be allowed to return to the excavation until the necessary precautions have been taken to ensure their safety. For example, the hazardous condition has been corrected and the corrective system has been returned to its fully operational condition. The key points that should be inspected at an excavation include the following. Were underground utilities located prior to the dig? Are all workers trained to the excavation standard? Is the excavation area barricaded to keep trespassers out? Are the workers protected from a cave-in? What type of protection is being used? Sloping, shoring or trench box? Is there water in the excavation? Is there any type of vibration causing machinery or traffic in the area? Is there a ladder or means of exit from the trench within 25 feet of the workers? Are the workers protected from objects striking them from above? Is the spoil pile at least 2 feet from the edge of the excavation? Are workers protected from falling objects? Hard hats being worn? You can use this OSHA guide for daily inspection of trenches and excavations as a checklist.
vode se prekida, ja sve bih dao da si sa mnom. Kuc, kuc, a neko je na vratima. Mene čekala je satima. Uđi, uđi, ništa me ne zanima. Ajde, ljubi tamo gde si ranila. Na usnama vatra, u ruku jas, u glavi se manta, u telu žar. Pucaju stakla, putevi pakla iza nas. Dobro znaš da smo taj film, a ti nežno usmila. Dok spava kad u paralelni svet povedi me. I kad ne budem odim, ti ne reci nikome. Na sve bih pristao, znaš da ova noć na tebi je.
Lesson summary. Employers are responsible for ensuring that materials and equipment are in good working condition, since damaged and defective materials and equipment could cause excavation accidents. Spoils refers to the soil removed from an excavation. It must be placed so as not to cause any hazards in the excavation, including being at least 2 feet away from the excavation's edge. OSHA standards prohibit excessive water accumulations when workers are in the trench. Employees should not work in excavations in which there is accumulated water, or in excavations in which water is accumulating, unless adequate precautions have been taken. Where oxygen or a hazardous atmosphere might exist, such as in excavations in landfill areas, the atmosphere in an excavation greater than 4 feet, 1.2 meters, must be tested before employees can enter. A stairway, ladder, or ramp must be provided in excavations 4 feet, 1.2 meters, or more in depth, in such a way to require no more than 25 feet, 7.6 meters, of lateral travel for employees. Before any excavation work begins, site evaluation and planning must consider factors like soil conditions, necessary safety equipment, and oxygen levels. A competent person must perform daily inspections of excavations, adjacent areas, and protective systems, looking for evidence of a situation that could result in possible cave-ins, indications of failure of protective systems, hazardous atmospheres, or other hazardous conditions to ensure safe operations. Lesson 3. Soil Classification Systems. Lesson Focus. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to describe different types of soil and rock classifications, explain how soil classification can affect safety at an excavation site, explain how soil classification tests are performed. Soil classification. A competent person must decide when to install a protective system when trenches are less than 5 feet, 1.5 meters, deep. Soil classification is one of the factors that influences a decision like that, as different soils behave in different ways when excavated and thus create different hazards. The following are some of the types of soil commonly encountered when excavating. Cohesive soil. Fissured. Granular. Type A, Type B, Type C. Classification of soil and rock deposits. Classification requires at least one visual and at least one manual test carried out by a competent person. In a layered soil system, the weakest layer is used to categorize the system. However, each layer may be classified individually where a more stable layer lies under a less stable layer. Visual tests. Visual analysis can reveal qualitative information regarding the excavation site in general, the soil adjacent to the excavation, the soil forming the sides of the open excavation, and the soil taken as samples from excavated material. Visual inspections include an examination of soil samples that have been dug up and of soil at the sides of the excavation. The inspector roughly calculates the array and approximate amounts of particle sizes. The inspector should understand that cohesive soil is chiefly composed of fine-grained material, whereas coarse-grained sand or gravel is granular material. Observe the soil as it is dug up. Cohesive soil stays in clumps when excavated, whereas soil that disintegrates quickly and does not form clumps is considered granular. Inspect the sides of the opened excavation and the surface area adjacent to the digging. Crack-like openings such as tension cracks could point toward fissured material. If clods of soil spall, spalling refers to flaking or otherwise breaking off from the main portion, off a vertical side, the soil could be fissured. Small spalls may indicate moving ground and can pose potentially dangerous situations. Examine the area next to the dig to identify previously disturbed soil, proof of existing utility and other underground structures. Observe the open side of the digging to identify layered systems. Examine layered systems to identify whether the layers slope upwards towards the dig. Estimate the degree of slope of the layers. Water and vibrations. Inspect the area next to the excavation and the sides of the opened excavation for traces of surface water, water seeping from the sides, or signs of the water table level. Observe the area adjacent to the excavation and the area within the digging for sources of vibration that may affect the strength of the excavation face. Manual tests. Manual tests involve inspecting soil with fingers or otherwise feeling it to determine its composition and other factors. There are a variety of manual tests that can be performed, as outlined here. Plasticity and pat test. Dry strength. Thumb penetration. Other strength tests. Plasticity and pat test. Shape a moist or wet sample of soil into a ball and try to roll it into threads as thin as 1/8 inch in diameter. Cohesive soil will usually roll into threads without disintegrating. If at least a 2-inch length of 1/8 inch thread can be held by one end without tearing, the soil is cohesive. On the palm of the hand, spread out a 1/8 or 1/4 inch thick sample of wet soil. Wipe the surface of the sample with a finger to clear away visible water. Face the surface of the palm upwards and slap the back of the hand moderately 5 to 10 times. If water oozes out to the surface of the sample, surface will appear shiny. The soil is mostly cohesive, lacking silt or sand. If no water shows up, then the soil is mostly cohesive clay. Dry strength. Granular soil disintegrates on its own, or with controlled pressure, into individual grains or powder when dry. Soils with clay content will break. Thumb penetration. The thumb penetration test can be used to evaluate the compressive strength of cohesive soils. This test should be carried out on an undisturbed soil sample. Other strength tests. Estimates of unconfined compressive strength of soils can also be made by using a pocket penetrometer or a hand-operated shear vane. Other tests include drying and sedimentation. Laboratory exercise. Manual soil tests. You must complete this lab in order to take the exam. Lesson Summary. A competent person must decide when to install a protective system where trenches are less than 5 feet deep. Soil classification is one of the factors that influences a decision like that, as different soils behave in different ways when excavated and thus create different hazards. Soil types fall into 3 overall categories: cohesive, durable and strong; fissured, tends to crack or break up; and granular, weak and flows easily when dry. Cohesive soil can be Type A, compression strength value of 1.5 tons per square foot or greater; Type B, compressive strength of more than 0.5 tsf, but less than 1.5 tsf; and Type C, compressive strength of 0.5 tsf or less. Soil classification requires at least one visual and at least one manual test carried out by a competent person. In a layered soil system, the weakest layer is used to categorize the system. However, each layer may be classified individually where a more stable layer lies under a less stable layer. Module 12. Fire Protection and Prevention. Module Description. This module has been designed to deliver first-hand information about fires and fire protection measures. After completing this module, you will be able to identify different types of fires and define the safety measures that can be taken to avoid a disastrous situation. We will also discuss the different types of fire extinguishers in use and discover how careful planning and precautionary measures can be taken to save lives and property. This module is intended for a general audience. For more information, please contact your local fire department and consult your fire safety and security maintenance supervisor. Module Learning Objectives. At the conclusion of this module, students will be able to identify different types of fires and fire extinguishers, discuss fire-related injuries and their immediate remedies, discuss fire protection systems and evacuation during a fire, create evacuation plans and prepare for emergencies. Lesson 1. Fire Safety Essentials. Lesson Focus. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to explain how fires burn, Describe types of fire prevention and protection. Understand how to use fire extinguishers, as well as their different types. Describe fire safety alarms. Describe proper rescue and evacuation plans. Describe the injuries associated with fire and their proper first aid. Identify different types of burns. Fires. The event of something burning, often destructive, is called a fire. Fires occur when the following elements are present. Oxygen, for example, air, compressed oxygen. Burning medium, for example, wood, combustible materials, paper, gasoline. Heat source, for example, flames, sparking elements, heaters. The following are the different types of fires. Click each image to view the details. Class A, ordinary combustible. Class B, combustible flammable liquids. Class C, electrical fires. Class D, flammable combustible metal fires. Class K, oils or fats. Fire prevention and protection. Employers are responsible for preventing fires in the workplace and protecting workers from fire-related hazards. To do this effectively, employers must create and implement a fire protection plan. Train employees on fire prevention and safety. Promote strong fire prevention practices and methods. Perform regular inspections to identify and address fire hazards. Fire protection plan. OSHA standards require employers to develop a fire protection plan that will be followed throughout all phases of construction and demolition work. This plan focuses on preventing fires and protecting all employees from fire hazards. Employers must immediately provide necessary firefighting equipment as specified by OSHA. A fire protection plan includes the following details. Names of employees responsible for controlling fire hazards from fuel sources. Names of employees responsible for fire prevention equipment or equipment to control fires. Safeguarding controls and maintenance of safeguards to prevent accidental fires caused by machinery, equipment, and materials that produce heat. Handling and storage of combustible or flammable materials. A temporary or permanent water supply of sufficient volume, duration, and pressure to operate the firefighting equipment must be made available as soon as combustible materials accumulate. Names of specific fire sources and locations and available equipment for fighting fires. A fire can start because of malfunctioning electrical equipment, cigarettes and tobacco products, overheated wiring and equipment, welding arcs, heating equipment. Fire prevention and safety training. Fire safety becomes everyone's job at a worksite. Employers should train workers about fire hazards in the workplace and about what to do in a fire emergency. OSHA mandates that employee fire safety training be provided upon initial employment and at least annually after that. The fire plan should outline the assignments of key personnel in the event of a fire and provide an evacuation plan for workers on the site. In the construction industry, a fire plan should be set up prior to beginning any demolition job. Some common sense rules in fire prevention planning include: all potential sources of ignition should be evaluated and the necessary corrective measures taken. Electrical wiring and equipment for providing light, heat, or power should be installed by a competent person and inspected regularly. Equipment powered by an internal combustion engine should be located so that the exhausts discharge well away from combustible materials and away from workers. When the exhausts are piped outside the building, a clearance of at least 6 inches should be maintained between such piping and combustible material. All internal combustion equipment should be shut down prior to refueling. Fuel for this equipment should be stored in a safe location. Sufficient firefighting equipment should be located near any flammable or combustible liquid storage area. Only approved containers and portable tanks should be used for the storage and handling of flammable and combustible liquids. The following references provide additional information to aid in recognizing and evaluating hazards and possible solutions in the workplace. Carbon monoxide explosion hazards in electric arc furnace steelmaking operations. OSHA Safety and Health Information Bulletin, SHIB, December 4, 2015. Combustible dust in industry, preventing and mitigating the effects of fire and explosions. OSHA Safety and Health Information Bulletin, SHIB, July 31, 2005. Highlights hazards associated with combustible dusts, work practices and guidelines that reduce the potential for a combustible dust explosion, or that reduce the danger to employees if such an explosion occurs, and training to protect employees from these hazards. Star ME1 Dry Fire Sprinklers. OSHA Safety and Health Information Bulletin, January 7, 2004. Total Flooding Carbon Dioxide, CO2, Fire Extinguishing System. OSHA Technical Information Bulletin, December 22, 2001. Fire hazard of polyurethane and other organic foam insulation aboard ships and in construction. OSHA Hazard Information Bulletin, May 10, 1989. OSHA Technical Manual, OTM. OSHA Directive TED 010015, TED 1-0.15A, January 20, 1999. Includes information on fire safety. Fire and explosions. Electronic Library of Construction Occupational Safety and Health, ELCOSH. Provides a list of construction-related fire safety resources. For additional information on hazards and possible solutions, see OSHA's Safety and Health Topics pages on demolition. Construction industry. Fire extinguishers. A fire extinguisher is a device used for putting out fires. There are 4 different types of fire extinguishers, which are classified according to the types of fire they extinguish. Each of the 4 types, classes A, B, C, and D, is rated for extinguishing a different kind of fire. Older fire extinguishers use geometric shapes to identify their type, but more current extinguishers use a labeling system that incorporates both words and pictures to distinguish the type of fire they are best suited for. The following are the types of fire extinguishers and the method or ingredients they employ. Class A, pressurized water cans, clean agent halogen, or wet chemical for specific applications. Class B, carbon dioxide, dry chemical, wet chemical, or clean agent halogen. Class C, dry chemical, carbon dioxide, or clean agent halogen. Class D, dry powder. Multi-class extinguishers, carbon dioxide dry chemical. Extinguishers must be placed in an easily accessible location and should be in good operating condition. Extinguishers should be placed adjacent to a normal path of travel to make them as visible and readily available as possible. At a minimum, fire extinguishers must be placed at all points of egress on construction projects and in close proximity to any combustible flammable materials stored on the site. Employers should make sure that the extinguishers are fully charged and operable. The proper class must be marked on the extinguisher so that it can be used according to the class of fire. Click each image to view the details. Class A extinguishers. Class B extinguishers. Class C extinguishers. Class D extinguishers. Multi-class fire extinguishers. Pass method. The pass method for using a fire extinguisher stands for pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. This acronym helps you remember the 4 essential steps to operate a fire extinguisher to put out a fire effectively. Click each tab to view the details. P. A. S. S. Fire safety alarms. Smoke alarms. In case of a building fire, the first step is to warn the occupants and evacuate the building as soon as possible. Early fire warnings can be given by smoke and fire alarms installed in strategic locations throughout a building. The 2 primary types of smoke alarms are ionization and photoelectric alarms. Ionization smoke detectors activate quickly and fast, flaming fires that consume combustible materials rapidly and spread quickly. The photoelectric type of smoke detector will respond more immediately to slow, smoldering fires. These types of detectors provide early detection of smoke. When installed correctly, they provide accurate and dependable smoke detection. A combination of both types of detectors provides the greatest protection against both fast-moving fires and smoldering fires. Fire sprinklers. Fire sprinklers are designed to provide 24-hour protection by detecting and controlling fires before they become a threat to lives or property. They react quickly and independently of one another so that only those detectors in the affected area activate. Most fires are controlled by 1 or 2 sprinklers dispersing a minimal amount of water, which reduces the fire and water damage significantly. Rescue and evacuation. Comprehensive evacuation plans are designed to assist employers in meeting or exceeding workplace safety standards. These plans must be a cooperative effort between the employers and the employees. Copies should be posted near all exits, stairways, fire extinguishing equipment, and any other location suitable for maximum exposure. These plans must contain pre-assessed escape and exit routes, designated assembly points, emergency call points, and the locations of fire extinguishing equipment. Fire-related injuries. The majority of fire-related deaths, as much as 80%, are caused by smoke inhalation. Burns and other injuries that result from direct contact with flames are actually second to smoke inhalation as a cause of death. According to data from OSHA, over an 11-year period, the construction industry saw a total of 361 fire or explosion deaths across 313 incidents, or an average of 30 per year. Smoke inhalation. Smoke inhalation is the #1 cause of fire-related deaths. Smoke from a fire may contain poisonous gases or may be hot enough to burn a victim's throat and lungs, resulting in serious breathing problems. Symptoms of heavy smoke inhalation include breathing trouble, coughing, drowsiness, an upset stomach, vomiting, unconsciousness, and DIAT. It is important to evacuate from a smoky room as quickly as possible. If available, use a piece of wet cloth to cover your mouth and nostrils as you crawl as close to ground level as possible to safety. Once you're in fresh air, rest while taking deep breaths, and do not enter the smoky area until the fire is completely extinguished, all smoke has been removed, and fire officials have cleared the area. Burns. Although smoke inhalation is the primary cause of fire-related deaths, burns actually cause more non-fatal injuries. For all burns beyond mild first-degree burns, seek medical attention immediately. Improper treatment can exacerbate the damage. Class A extinguishers. Class A extinguishers are water-based or wet chemical solutions that are used on paper, cloth, wood, trash, and other common combustible fires. These extinguishers utilize a cooling and soaking stream that is effective on Class A fires. The numerical rating for this class of fire extinguisher refers to the amount of water it holds and the amount of fire it will extinguish. Class B extinguishers. Class B extinguishers are pressurized with non-flammable carbon dioxide gas, dry chemical, wet chemical, or clean agent halogen. Carbon dioxide reduces, or smothers, the oxygen content to a point where combustion cannot continue. Carbon dioxide is a clean, non-contaminating, odorless gas that can safely be applied to clothing, equipment, and valuable documents without causing extreme damage. Class B extinguishers are used on fires involving flammable liquids including grease, gasoline, oil, paint thinner, hydraulic fluids, flammable cleaning solvents, and other hydrocarbon fuels. Carbon dioxide is extremely cold when dispersed from the extinguisher. The numerical rating for this class of fire extinguisher denotes the area in square feet of a flammable liquid fire that a person can expect to extinguish. Class C extinguishers. Class C fire extinguishers are used on fires involving energized electrical equipment. Such fires must be extinguished using a non-conductive extinguishing agent such as carbon dioxide, a dry chemical, or a clean agent halogen. Carbon dioxide is most effective in extinguishing electrical fires as it does not leave a residue that can harm sensitive electronics. This class of fire extinguishers does not have a numerical rating. Class C extinguishers only have a letter rating because there is no readily measurable quantity for Class C fires. The letter C indicates that the extinguishing agent is non-conductive. Class D extinguishers. Class D extinguishers are designed for use on flammable metals and are often specific to the metal in question. Metals such as magnesium, potassium, titanium, and sodium burn at high temperatures and give off sufficient oxygen to support combustion. These metals react violently with water or other chemicals and must be handled with great care. The most common extinguishers for Class D fires use a dry powder designed specifically for this purpose. A common method of extinguishing small flammable metals fires is to cover the fire in dry sand. No picture designator is used on Class D extinguishers. These types of extinguishers generally do not have a numerical rating because they are designed specifically for combustible metal fires. These fires require a specialized extinguishing agent and are not categorized with a standard rating system like other fire classes, A, B, C. Multi-class fire extinguishers. Many fire extinguishers can be used on more than one class of fire and are called multi-purpose extinguishers. Multi-class fire extinguishers are labeled with more than one class designator, such as AB, BC, or ABC. Multi-class fire extinguishers typically contain dry chemicals and an extinguishing agent that uses a compressed, non-flammable gas as a propellant. Lesson summary. Fires require oxygen, a fuel source, such as wood, paper, or another combustible material, and a heat source. Fires fall into different classes based on their sources and proper control measures. Class A fires involve ordinary combustible materials. Class B fires involve combustible or flammable liquids. Class C fires involve electricity. Class D fires involve flammable or combustible metals. Class K fires involve cooking oils and fats. Employers are responsible for preventing fires in the workplace and protecting workers from fire-related hazards. To do this effectively, employers must create and implement a fire protection plan. Train employees on fire prevention and safety. Promote strong fire prevention practices and methods. Perform regular inspections to identify and address fire hazards. There are 4 different types of fire extinguishers, which are classified according to the types of fire they extinguish. Each of the 4 types, classes A, B, C, and D, is rated for extinguishing a different kind of fire. The 2 primary types of smoke alarms in use are ionization and photoelectric alarms. Ionization smoke detectors activate more quickly and fast, flaming fires that consume combustible materials rapidly and spread quickly. The photoelectric type of smoke detector will respond more immediately to slow, smoldering fires. These types of detectors provide early detection of smoke. When installed correctly, they provide accurate and dependable smoke detection. Fire sprinklers are designed to provide 24-hour protection by detecting and controlling fires before they become a threat to lives or property. They react quickly and independently of one another so that only those sprinklers in the affected area activate. The majority of fire-related deaths, as much as 80%, are caused by smoke inhalation. Burns and other injuries that result from direct contact with flames are actually second to smoke inhalation as a cause of death. Lesson 2. Fire Prevention and Safety Measures. Lesson Focus. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to identify ignition hazards, understand safety needs related to temporary buildings, open yard storage, and indoor storage, conduct fire emergency planning, identify and explain types of portable firefighting equipment, a footwear manufacturing factory employing 30 workers, identify and explain types of fixed firefighting equipment. Ignition hazards. Electrical wiring and equipment should be installed by an experienced electrical professional in compliance with the requirements of applicable safety and building standards. Smoking should be strictly prohibited in any area that could pose a potential fire hazard. Such areas should be clearly marked with no smoking signs. Pipe joints to tanks or vessels that carry flammable gases or liquids must be liquid and vapor tight. Above ground piping must be secured to prevent disengagement at the fitting or at the piping system. This design is mandatory to ensure that any spill resulting from any disengagement does not unduly expose persons, buildings, or structures. Combustible dusts. Combustible dusts are fine particles that present an explosion hazard when suspended in air in certain conditions. A dust explosion can be catastrophic and cause employee deaths, injuries, and the destruction of entire buildings. In many combustible dust incidents, employers and employees were unaware that a hazard even existed. It is important to determine if your company has this hazard and, if you do, you must take action now to prevent tragic consequences. In addition to the familiar fire triangle of oxygen, heat, and fuel, the dispersion of dust particles in sufficient quantity and concentration can cause rapid combustion, known as deflagration. If the event is confined by an enclosure such as a building, room, vessel, or process equipment, the resulting pressure rise may cause an explosion. These 5 factors, oxygen, heat, fuel, dispersion, and confinement, are known as the dust explosion pentagon. If one element of the pentagon is missing, an explosion cannot occur. An initial, primary, explosion in processing equipment or in an area where fugitive dust has accumulated may dislodge more accumulated dust into the air or damage a containment system, such as a duct, vessel, or collector. As a result, if ignited, the additional dust dispersed into the air may cause one or more secondary explosions. These can be far more destructive than a primary explosion due to the increased quantity and concentration of dispersed combustible dust. Many deaths in past incidents, as well as other damage, have been caused by secondary explosions. Click each tab to view the details. Dust control recommendations. Ignition control recommendations. Injury and damage control methods. Safety needs for temporary buildings, open yard and indoor storage. Temporary buildings. Temporary buildings should not be constructed in any location where the means of exit could be adversely affected. If a temporary structure is constructed within a building, it should be made of non-combustible material. Temporary combustible structures, covering a maximum area of 2,000 square feet, should be constructed at least 10 feet away from any other building and should never be used for storage and handling of flammable or combustible liquids, gases, explosives, or blasting agents or similar hazardous materials. Open yard storage. The following guidelines should be followed whenever storing materials in an open yard. Combustible materials should be stored in a stable condition and should not be stacked or piled higher than 20 feet. Driveways between combustible storage spaces should be at least 15 feet wide and should be properly maintained for easy access. The storage site should be kept free from the accumulation of unnecessary combustible materials. Weeds and grass should be properly maintained and regular checks should be made to ensure cleanup of the storage areas. No combustible material should be stored outdoors within 10 feet of a building or structure. Portable fire extinguishing equipment, clearly labeled for the type of fire, should be provided at convenient and conspicuously accessible locations. The maximum travel distance to the nearest fire extinguishing unit should not exceed 100 feet. Indoor storage. The following guidelines should be followed whenever storing materials indoors. Storage should not obstruct exits, no matter how secure the fire evacuation plan may seem. Materials should not be stored within 36 inches of a fire door opening. All materials should be stored, handled, and piled with due regard to their fire or ignition characteristics. Materials should be stacked to minimize the spread of fire and to permit convenient access for firefighting. The distance from the top of the storage pile to the nearest sprinkler should be at least 18 inches. Lighting and heating